Billy, we were talking about the Japan Cup and what an extraordinary experience that was. What do you remember of going out for that? Because people, young Boro fans, won't know anything about this, but we beat China along the way. We beat Japan, and then we beat what was the Spanish team we beat in the final?
Real Betis.
Real
Betis.
Right.
What I remember about it is the cup was bigger than Stan Cummins.
Which wasn't very big then.
Oh man, it was massive. Do you know the weird thing about it? When we were out there, we were at the British Embassy in Tokyo, and I was talking to this guy, and somebody says, "Ash, do you want a beer?" And he said, "Yeah." So I said, "Oh, he's talking to me." He said, "Oh, because my name's Ashcroft." I found out the interpreter was my second cousin from Liverpool.
Give up.
I swear on it. He came round with us. He was knocking around a guy called Carl Ashcroft.
Wow, what
Really?
Weird.
Hey, Dave, this is one, and I'm hoping you can remember this. Can you remember the gambling that was taking place on the game, Billy?
The gambling, the Chinese fella.
Right, hold on. Right, here we go. He remembers. Right, David. So I'm in the room, and this is before the first game. And the guy knocks on the bedroom door, me and Procky in the bedroom. The guy comes to the door and he says, he comes in, tells us who he is, and says, if you beat whoever we play in the next game by two clear goals, I will give each member of the team $100. Right? So we tell the seniors, which is obviously, like Billy, Tony Mack, obviously first and foremost, Trapper, etc., and said, listen, guys come on the door and said, if we win the next game by two goals, he'll come to our bedroom and he'll pay us $100 per man for the bonus. And we beat them by 2 goals, and this guy turned up at the change at our bedroom with the cash, paid us the money, and said, if you win the next game, I'll pay you even more. He came all the way through. He came up to us in the final and said, if you win by 1 goal in the final, I will give you, it was $500, say, for example. And we won on penalties, if I remember right, by 1 goal. He actually turned up at the hotel and paid the lads. I'll never forget, I think we made about $750 to $1,000 bonus off this Chinese gambler.
Yeah, I remember that well.
There you go.
I mean, it doesn't happen these days.
Did you?
Yeah. Talking of foreigners, you were. I think the sort of second foreigner of that era that we brought in, of course, was another really skillful player, Heine Otto. What do you remember? What do you remember of Heine? Because obviously, I seem to think that there's a link here to you, Billy, and why you ended up going to Holland yourself afterwards.
Yeah, Heine was a class player, a bit of a Rolls Royce. He was one of those players in the same sort of mould as Muren and Tyson. And I think when he came, it was something we needed. Somebody who understood the game, because he'd got 1 cap for Holland, which he shouldn't have got. I think he turned up with somebody's boots, and they were a man short, so they took him. And I think he was at Canberra or something like that at the time, but he got a cap through that. And so you think, well, he can't be that good, because you never see him in the Dutch national team. But he was a fabulous player for us, and I'm still in touch with him now. As you say, he got me the job at FC20, which I'll be forever grateful with him.
So how did that come about? He recommended you when you were available?
Well, what it was, I mean, I wasn't getting in the team on the last season, because when Bob took over. Yeah, I've got no hard feelings with it. It was just that Bob didn't fancy me as a player. And at the end of the season, I went to speak to John Neal at Chelsea, and we agreed I was going to sign for them. And he said he was going to get some of the other lads, like Trapper and people, Mickey Thomas and Joey Jones. And then I met Ken Bates, and I thought I just couldn't sign for the man. So when I got back to Liverpool, there was 2 tickets to go to Schiphol. And Heine had spoken to FC20. I went over there, they let me play in a practice match, and I signed and stayed. I signed a 2-year contract, and the last season, or the second season I was there, I scored 30 goals, second leading scorer in the country, and got another year out of it.
Fantastic. Well, so you, go on, you touched on it there. You can't leave it at that. Why did Ken Bates put you off going there?
Well, he walked onto the pitch and I was thinking, he looks like that fellow of Kentucky Fried Chicken. And he comes on, I didn't order anything. And then I said to him, like, I've got my contract. He said, well, where do you live in Middlesbrough? I said, I live in a place called Cricket Lane. And he said, well, how much will you get for your house? So I don't know, whatever it said, 30,000. He said, you get a nice little 1-bedroom flat for that down here. So I said, well, you're going to have to help me to, he said, we'll sort it. And he wouldn't mention any numbers. And I said, well, I'm not coming down to London to play for you if you're not going to speak about wages. I said, I've got a wife and 2 kids. And he says, it's like an honour to play for Chelsea, which it probably would have been. But as soon as I got on the plane to Holland, they said, we're going to give you this, and there's a Mercedes you can have, and they're just like so fronted on his people.
Fantastic.
But wow. I couldn't have signed for Ken, I'm sorry.
Hodgie, right, before I forget, I've got to ask you that famous story that's about, I thought it was when you were injured, but you tell me it was when you were suspended and you couldn't play for the Boro first team. So what did you do instead? You actually joined your mates in the Holgate end to watch the
Holgate end. Yeah.
What were the mates? Who were the mates again?
Brom. It was West Brom in the cup. I think we won 1-0 that day. And I remember running on the pitch. I was lucky because I could run on the pitch and the stewards didn't have to take me off because I was a player. So, yeah, but I remember I might have actually gone out on the Friday night because I obviously I knew I wasn't playing. And I think I might have, the 2 lads was Tommy McGinn, and I still speak to Tommy now, and Spanky, who I've not spoken to since probably way gone, leaving the Boro. And
Spanky, it's a great name. If anyone out there knows where Spanky is, let us know.
Please, both good lads. You know, listen, these were proper Boro lads. These were street kids, you know, in theory. And I think Tommy said to me, Hodgie, listen, why don't you come and join us in the Holgate tomorrow? And I said, yeah, all right, why not? And I didn't realise exactly what kind of stir it would cause, you know. People took my jacket off me. I lost buttons, and it was incredible. But it was I'm the only guy who could go in the Holgate end, and I'm serious, by the way. I actually sang a Sunderland song, and nobody clipped me. So I was dead lucky. Yeah.
I mean, that was. I mean, it was a great era in so many ways, and you both. You know, you both had a great, obviously a great relationship with John Neal, and I know from speaking to some of the other lads that Bobby Murdoch, people had a good relationship with Bobby. I know Billy, you've already touched on that. He obviously didn't fancy you as a player, but was in hindsight, was his appointment a mistake, or was he just unlucky to become the manager at a time when Boro decided to sell too many of the best players? I mean, how do you look back on what went wrong there? Because it ended in relegation, of course.
Well, it's not that I didn't get on with Bob. That me and Bob were good mates, but as a player, he had his own sort of vision of what was going to happen. But I think giving him the job was unfair. I don't think it was the wrong thing, I just think it was unfair because however that happened, they dismantled the team. Yeah. And instead of getting a sort of an experienced manager who knew how to get a team together and build a team, they got Bob who'd never managed before. And they said, don't get on with it. And I don't think Bob had the experience to actually go and say, right, this is the structure that we're going to have in this team and this is what I'm going to do. Bob was a great coach, but manager, I think if he didn't have somebody with him at the time, maybe like somebody like Warnock, somebody who knew how to put a team together, with Bob's coaching, he could have gone far. But I just think they just put him in the boat and let him drift out, and nobody helped him. And it was a bit unfortunate because Bob was a great bloke.
I'm guessing that he was influential in your young career, was he, Bobby?
Phenomenal. Yeah, no question. I think myself, Craig Johnson, of course, Procky, not just that, people like Mickey Angus, Colin Ross, and all these kids who came through. I think we've all got to be grateful for Bobby Murdoch, because what he could do was, one, he knew the game. okay, one, he was a great player. Jesus, he was a Lisbon Lion, for God's sake. But more importantly, he could show you. So when you went on the training ground, you had this guy who hadn't long finished playing, by the way, and had this ability just to show everybody, whatever position they played, exactly what they should be doing, what they should be looking for when they were on the ball, what they should be looking to do when they weren't on the ball. So he was this amazing coach. And giving him that job was at the time for us was great because we were kids, we couldn't come through with him. But it was just too big of a job because he lost so many good players. He would have had to rebuild the side. The players that came in, no disrespect to them, they were nowhere near as good as the ones that we'd lost. Nowhere near. And I think the other side of Bobby, and God bless him, and he, as I said, without him, some of us probably may never have gone on to be what we were because of how he was. But Bobby liked the pint. And it got to the point where it was a case of the people in the, I think it was the Yellow something, what was the pub called at the time?
Yellow Rose.
Yellow Rose.
Yellow line or red line. Yellow line or red line or something. They knew the team before we did because Bobby was going in there and probably getting absorbed by the fans at the time, and he was having a pint too many, and he was probably telling them, give or take, that what was taking place at the ground, so people knew everything before we did. And I think it was probably because it was too big of a job for him. It took him away too early, that's for sure, because I think all the pressures of that probably made Bobby drink a little bit more than he probably should have, at the time, that's for sure. Pretty sad.
Do you look back and think that team, I mean, as exciting as it was, and we haven't hardly touched on what went wrong in that infamous FA Cup final. I mean, I think it should have achieved more than it did. And do you think maybe I know we've recently had on some of we've been speaking to some of the team that Jack Charlton was part of, and they've basically said, well, you know what, we were one or two players short of if we'd replaced John Higton as a centre forward, we might have won the title. Do you think we were one or two players short in that team that might have just gone on to be real challengers?
I think so, yeah. I think that they bought me to replace Hickey. I never did it. How can you replace John Higton? You know what I mean? He's a legend. He still is a legend of the club. And I felt sure.
Don't be disrespectful, Billy, yourself, because you scored. I think you were our top goal scorer. So if you were our top goal scorer and Hickey was our top goal scorer, so you replaced him as a top goal scorer. So I don't think that's the case.
It wasn't many though. I mean, Hickey was scoring treble figures every year, and I found it tough. I always look back and I think maybe John made a mistake signing me, or he should have signed me with, as Dave was saying before, with a Mickey Thomas or something that I was used to. But nobody's going to replace Hickey. And then after that, he put me in when Boney went. Instead of buying another centre half, I was replacing the legend. And I think I found that probably weighed a bit heavy on my shoulders. And I
think you did very well at centre half, Billy, and I still remember the fans chanting your name with so well was did your transformation centre back.
I don't know, but I actually think we would have replaced with like for like players because we had the nucleus of a really, really good team. And I'm thinking possibly John was looking for maybe one or two more, but they would have been like marquee signings for us. They would have been the big signings. And whether he was stopped by the directors or by cash, or they told him to get rid of players before, I just think we didn't quite achieve what we should have done. We were a good team and we could have got better.
Well, there's controversy, isn't there, about was Charlie Amer really, did he look after the club in the best possible way? And a lot of fans now, with hindsight, say no, that he didn't look after the club. He didn't do what was right for the club. I mean, I don't know, Hodgie, do you think back and think, well, if only we'd had a bit more ambition?
Well, to be honest with you, going back to the quarter-final game, when we got beat in the quarter-finals, if we'd got through that, we would have played Spurs. We knew that before the game started. We'd already beat Spurs home and away. So probably maybe we had an eye on that game more so than the actual Wolves game. And we'd actually beaten Wolves as well, by the way. So I think there's an element of luck required, and we just on that particular night, we just didn't have that element of luck that went our way. When we got back to 1-1, it obviously went extra time, and that's when the game turned on us. But that was one turning point for the club. But going back to Charles Amer, I remember obviously I signed a lucrative contract at Middlesbrough when Procky and Craig had all gone. In fact, I know for a fact that at that point my contract was probably the highest in football at the time. I know that for a fact. Okay, and I remember Harold Shepherdson coming to me and saying, "Listen, we've had an offer from Liverpool. I know they've had some offers from other people as well, by the way, but he said, we've had an offer from Liverpool, we're going to take it." And I said, "For what reason?" And I remember Harold saying, "We've built something that's worth nothing." And it was basically, I don't know if you remember that. Remember this big gymnasium and big room that they built on outside this? And they couldn't get planning for it. Apparently it'd been built and it couldn't get planning, and they needed money to finish it because I think it turned into some big lounge or whatever, I'm not too sure. So my exit was basically to cover the cost of whatever had gone wrong on that goddamn building. And of course he made reference to my wages because he went and publicised that. When I signed for Liverpool, I remember Kenny coming to me, one of the first mornings I'd arrived at Anfield, he said, Kenny was in the change room and I arrived in on his own.
Kenny Dalglish.
He said, yeah, he said, "I need to have a word with you in the toilet." And I went in, he said, "Yeah, I've seen that article in the newspaper. Is it true or false?" He said, "If it's false, sue them. If it's true, keep quiet." And I naively, I turned around and said, "Oh, it's totally true." And I remember seeing Kenny going back down to Bob Paisley's office. And you probably see how it was on £1,000 a week, and we're on about 4 or 5. Then, anyway, so the bottom line was, I wasn't a big fan of Charles Amer because he sold me when I didn't want to go, and then he went and disclosed salaries when you shouldn't have done. So for me, that's not the right thing to do. But going back to the original question, I think an element to look at the quarterfinals. If we got the semis, we would have beat Spurs. We could have gone on to Wembley. God knows what would have happened.
I agree.
It could have been Billy Ashcroft doing the Ricky Villa run through the Man City defence.
Ginger hair.
Yeah, I mean, Billy, was that game really like that? Because I've seen it written before that from that moment on, Boro went backwards for about 7 years. So.
Well, if you look what happened after that, I was making a list before of all the players that left, and there was like Craig went, Proc went, Spike, Bosco went, Trapper, Hodgie, and then that's what Bob was left with. The sort of skeleton crew, if you like, and Bill Shankly, Mourinho, any of these people, they would have found it hard with all the money they could get. They would have found it hard to put a team together, especially a team that is needed in Middlesbrough, because they don't take any crap off anybody. They want to see their players on that pitch giving 100%.
Yeah, because we were relegated and even struggled in the second division as it was then, of course, and obviously Bobby lost his job. I seem to remember 3 successive 4-1 home defeats. One of them to Grimsby, as I recall. And then, of course, Big Mal came in, didn't he? And that was that in itself became a disaster movie of its own. It all ended up in liquidation, and it all just seemed to go badly wrong from that quarter final onwards, where the heart was somehow lost from the club for a few years.
Yeah, destroyed it there. There's nothing more certain. But from that came all the good kids: Tony Mowbray, Bernie, Croops, all those kids came through and rescued the Boro. Pally, of course, rescued the Boro, and then became legends in themselves because the club found its feet again and started to rise. So had we not lost that particular game and the decline of the club over a period of 6 or 7 years, and maybe some of those kids might not have got the chance, at the time, that maybe the club might have gone and bought bigger and they stopped the route through. That's for sure. Yeah.
Brilliant. One last question for you, lads, and I'll start with you, Billy. What does Boro mean to you? Because we're talking about an era now of, you were 40 years ago that you were at the Boro. I know that you're a back Liverpudlian, really, Scouser, aren't you? But and Wrexham's close to your heart, of course.
Not a Liverpudlian. I suppose Everton. I'm a Scouser.
Get it right, Dave.
What does Boro mean to me? You're given the opportunity in life to do something really good, and I played football. And if you can think 40 years later, there's people going to remember. And just today on Facebook, I got a guy asking me if he could send me some photographs to sign them. And I still get people remember me now. I'm a driving instructor. I can walk down the road with Graham, nobody knows me. But at Boro and Wrexham and the places where I played, you're still close to their hearts. And I always think to myself, I got paid for doing this. It's the best job in the world. And you make mates like Odgie, Trapper. I'm still in touch with Smed. I've still got great mates up there. I absolutely love the place.
Fantastic. What about you, Hodgie?
I think Billy's just about summed it, to be honest with you. And as I said early on at the very beginning, it's been 40 years since I left Middlesbrough, give or take. 38 years. I left when I was 21, so I'm 60 coming up now. And for all the wonderful times I had at Liverpool and all the success I had, I actually ended up playing for Sunderland, which was the team I supported as a kid. If I could wind back time and end up back at Ayresome Park today, I would, without the second doubt. Obviously, I'd have to try and make sure I find my wife to come back at that time with me. But yeah, 100%. Sir. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Amazing, amazing time.
Well, and I'm quite sure that the current Boro team could do with a Dave Hodgson and a Billy Ashcroft as well to get us out of the hole that we've been in recently. And we're all looking forward and hoping for a better season next year. I'm sure you are too. Thanks for joining us on Boro Backtrack, guys. We really appreciated having that rewind and going back those 40 years to a great era for the Boro. To everybody watching, thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening. We'll be back with more former Boro stars with a future Boro Backtrack in the very near future. We'll see you then.
Up the Boro.
Cheers, guys.